So, the verse that I get to talk about today is John 20:29, and it says, Jesus, after appearing to Thomas and allowing him to see and touch his wounds, says, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. So, a couple things that pop up to me when I read this. First of all, that we're blessed. Jesus is talking about um, us when he said, Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. So, we have not seen Jesus and we believe. And so, we get maybe an extra blessing, or at least we're called blessed. And that's pretty cool to me. Another thing I think of, somebody once talked about how we have kind of pigeonholed Thomas. Everybody knows the term doubting Thomas, and um, which in that moment he was doubting. But somebody said when you look back at John 11:16, and this was it says, then Thomas said to the rest of the disciples, let us go that we may die with him. And this was taking place when they were going back to Judea, to the place where the people were trying to stone Jesus. So Thomas was the one standing up during Jesus' life saying, okay, this is what Jesus wants, let's go die with him. So he was ready to die. He was faithful. And yet he has his doubts, and so that's what we have pinned on him. But I think of that and how Thomas is much more than just a moment in his life. Also, I think about what I have learned and experienced through doubt, and I think, well, I know there have been times in my life where I have struggled with doubt. But I was not just sitting by and letting these thoughts direct my beliefs and my actions. Instead, I prayed. Um, when I'm talking about doubts, there have been certain times where I doubt everything, like in a moment of doubt, like how could this be real? And those doubts are fleeting, and those go away quickly, the doubt of all the things. But when I talk about doubt, I'm more referring to the doubts we have within our faith, when with certain scriptures and with certain things that we know God has said, and but really, we have the verse that says, Lord, I believe, help me in my unbelief. That's the kind of doubts that I think of more when I think of the doubts that I struggle with. But in those doubts, I don't just sit there and be like, well, I doubt that, so I'm going to move along in my walk with God and my faith, and I'm just going to doubt that. I'm just going to not believe that. I think when I have those doubts, I keep seeking, I keep reading, I keep talking to other Christians, and I keep reflecting. Somebody once said, and I have the quote here, that doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. It keeps it alive and moving. And this was Frederick Buechner, and he was a author and theologian. But I remember teaching about this to my youth group kids years and years ago, and I gave them little plastic ants to remind us of this. So ants can be annoying, and ants can be frustrating and uncomfortable, that's the same as doubts. But it can keep our faith from being stagnant or complacent. And I think that's really important, because sometimes when we don't have doubts, it's because we're not really thinking about our faith. We're not really like going deeper. We just, okay, it is what it is, and we move on. I remember talking to somebody who said he was a Christian, and he just said, I just believe everything the Bible says. I don't need to read it. And like, how can you believe what you don't know? And so I think doubt is that for us is that the little niggling, the little annoying thing that, okay, I need to go deeper in order to get rid of this doubt. It can be the catalyst for a deeper exploration and understanding of our faith. So when I've had times of doubts of certain things, uh, one of the hugest things, like I said, was reflecting. And I remember I was at a low time in my faith, and I was just down and struggling emotionally, probably more than anything, and just really not seeing God the way I should, and struggling with elements of doubt. And I reread some of my journals that I had written years ago, and just talking about when God was showing up and God was doing things, and I was seeing his hand in things, and I was reminded, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." And that encouraged me in my faith, and it erased some of those doubts. Another time is when I needed affirmation about God loving me. I I want to say I doubted God loving me. I did and I didn't. It was one of those times where it's kind of a mixture of both, but I didn't feel it at all. And so I just pray. I'm like, God, please show me that you love me today. Um, and I was driving, and the car in front of me was either an SUV or it was a minivan, but the back window was dirty, and somebody had used their finger to put a heart and ASH, and ASH is my initials. And so I was dumbfounded when I saw that, knowing that is God showing me, I love you, Amy, and I'm willing to meet you where you're at and in your struggle. So that was super cool. Uh, Another thing that I recently read was in Matthew 28:16 and 17. And that says, "Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus told them to go. When they saw him, they worshiped him, but some doubted." And so this was after Jesus had been raised from the dead, and it was on the mountain that they went and they worshiped him. And it said some doubted. And this is talking about the disciples. It said the 11. So these were the ones that he had shown up before to, I believe all of them had seen him at this point, but they doubted. And it doesn't say exactly what they doubted or how that all worked out. But we know that each one of those people, except for John, was martyred for their faith. And so even though they had that moment of doubt, they got beyond it to stand and be faithful to Christ, and to say, no, I'm willing to die for this belief I have. And so I thought that was really cool, because a lot of times we just think, oh, I'm such a horrible person, or I don't have enough faith because I struggle with this concept, or with something about my faith. But no, it's doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. It keeps it alive and moving. It keeps us going, as long as we don't just sit there in it. If we didn't have those little niggles of doubt, sometimes we wouldn't be as pursuant in our faith or ready to go deeper. So if you have doubts in your faith or within your faith, keep pursuing, because God is faithful.